Chapter 2147. Itsuka Kotori's house. Thinking of Tokisaki Kurumi's unhappy face, but she had no choice but to lower her head. Dustless felt an indescribable joy in his heart. Tokisaki Kurumi was extremely seductive, as dangerous as a poppy flower, but also irresistible. However, her personality was as stubborn as the seductress Meijio. Dustless knew that he didn't have the ability to conquer this thorny rose. After all, not everyone had the same protagonist aura as Itsuka Shido. That was why Dustless had spent a lot of effort to force them to lower their heads. Now that he finally had some progress, he could not help but feel relieved. Kemui. Dustless activated his ocular skill and the void in front of him distorted. He then jumped into it. The gloomy world was deathly still. There were no signs of life. The entire world was gray, just like the scene of the beginning of the world. As far as the eye could see, this world was filled with endless skyscrapers, but there wasn't a single human or living being. Even the air that entered the lungs was suffused with depression and coldness. It was undeniable that living in such a depressing environment was truly incomparably gloomy. After a long time, no matter who it was, they would be able to endure it. Unexpectedly, Wuxian was no exception. Just think about it, if there was only one person in a world, wouldn't that be boring to death? Buzz, buzz, buzz. A series of ripples appeared in the sky. A young man with his hands behind his back slowly walked out of the ripples. There was a faint smile on his handsome face. Who else but Dustless could enter the Kemui dimension other than the trapped enemies? Aye, Miss Toshiaki Kurumi. You look really pathetic. Dustless lowered his head and looked at the ground. He quickly found Toshiaki Kurumi's trace and walked over to her. Bastard. Seeing Dustless walking over, Toshiaki Kurumi cursed in her heart. If it were not for the difference in strength, she would not mind giving Dustless a good beating. Looking at her, Toshiaki Kurumi's eyes were gloomy. She looked like a patient who had just recovered from a serious illness. Her spirit was dispirited. Her white cheeks were also very dull. She looked very gloomy. This was all thanks to Dustless. After being locked up for so many days, Toshiaki Kurumi had been tormented by loneliness. Huff. Seeing Dustless finally appear, Toshiaki Kurumi's eyes glowed with a strong desire to win. Let me out and I'll agree to all your conditions. From today onwards I'll be your slave. I didn't force you. I'm a very democratic person. Dustless put on a kind face. But in Toshiaki Kurumi's eyes, you're a good person? Then I'm a saint. But, Dustless's tone suddenly changed. Since you've agreed to be my slave, I can't refuse. Naturally, I have to take in a poor homeless person like you. So from today onwards, you're mine. If I tell you to go east, you have to go to the end of the world. Even if there's a mountain of swords and a sea of fire in front of you, you can't hesitate. Do you understand? What an annoying guy. Toshiaki Kurumi snorted in her heart. But on the surface she had no choice but to agree. I swear, okay? From now on I'll be Dustless's slave. I'll die a horrible death if I break my oath. As soon as she finished speaking, Toshiaki Kurumi looked at Dustless with her lustful eyes. She lowered her head in submission. Her watery eyes were full of flattery, as if she could agree to any of Dustless's conditions. At least you know what's good for you. Dustless glanced at Toshiaki Kurumi and said no more. He activated his eye skill again. Soon the void in front of them twisted and a pitch-black hole appeared. Dustless took Toshiaki Kurumi into the hole and disappeared from Kemui world. We're finally back. But why is it your house? Toshiaki Kurumi took a deep breath of fresh air. Her expression was indescribably comfortable. After being locked up for so long, she was about to go crazy. I'd like to ask that too. Itsuka Kotori was like an overturned jar of vinegar. She glared at Toshiaki Kurumi and asked in a serious tone, "Since when did you have another elf in your house? What's your relationship with her? Could it be that you've already conquered it? Dustless, you're really a Casanova." Itsuka Kotori said it nicely, but everyone could hear the sourness in her words. Not only Itsuka Kotori, but even Yusuke Toka and the others looked at Dustless with dissatisfaction. This guy is really a womanizer. What relationship? Can't you see it? You're so slow. Toshiaki Kurumi returned to her demonic nature and approached Dustless. Her next move shocked everyone. What? In a flash, Toshiaki Kurumi tiptoed and left a kiss on Dustless's cheek. She looked at Itsuka Kotori and said with a smile, Now do you know what our relationship is? Little mistress. From now on I'm masters. Master. What's your relationship? Itsuka Kotori wasn't the only one who was angry. Everyone glared at Toshiaki Kurumi and cursed her for being the reincarnation of a vixen. She was too shameless, and the word master made their imaginations run wild. However, most of them glared at Dustless with hatred. What does it have to do with me? I didn't say anything. You guys are too naive. Can't you see that Toshiaki Kurumi is trying to take revenge on me? Dustless looked at the girls who were gobbling up the food and felt innocent. He looked at Toshiaki Kurumi and saw her gloating expression. He knew that she did it on purpose. Itsuka Kotori and the others were all jealous. Toshiaki Kurumi used their innocent thoughts to her advantage. For example, she kissed Dustless to make them jealous. Chapter 2148. Dustless felt wronged when he saw the greedy eyes of the girls. He glanced at Tokisaki Kurumi and saw her gloating expression. He knew that she did it on purpose. Itsuka Kotori and the rest were all jealous, and Tokisaki Kurumi made use of their pure thoughts. For example, kissing Wuxian just now was to get rid of these jealous people. Needless to say, Tokisaki Kurumi was very smart. She winked at Wuxian, flirted with him, and purposely straightened her body. At the same time, she looked at Itsuka Kotori provocatively. Her mocking gaze was clearly saying, "Don't be envious of me, you airport runway. Don't get carried away." Itsuka Kotori's expression changed. She glared at Tokisaki Kurumi and snorted proudly. "I'm still young. When I grow up, my body will make you feel ashamed." But when she said that, Itsuka Kotori didn't sound confident. She wasn't sure what would happen in the future. She was just bickering. How could an outsider like Tokisaki Kurumi be so arrogant? She couldn't tolerate it. "It's all your fault for bringing back such a jinx." She glared at Wuxian with an unfriendly gaze. Itsuka Kotori pushed all the responsibility to him. If it wasn't for him being a busybody and bringing Tokisaki Kurumi back, this wouldn't have happened. "What does it have to do with me? Didn't you ask me to conquer the elves? Now you're blaming me." Dustless rolled his eyes when he saw Itsuka Kotori's glare. At the same time, he glared at Tokisaki Kurumi. He knew that she did it on purpose to make everyone angry. "Ha!" Tokisaki Kurumi suddenly chuckled. She stared at Wuxian as if she had discovered a new continent. She didn't care about the disgust in the eyes of the people around her. "I seem to have discovered your weakness. You don't seem to be able to do anything against them." Dustless looked at Tokisaki Kurumi as if he was an idiot. He couldn't be bothered to waste his breath on her. Tokisaki Kurumi had sneakily kissed him on the cheek, but she didn't seal her power. This meant that Tokisaki Kurumi didn't have a good impression of Dustless. It was unrealistic for him to obtain her power. Tokisaki Kurumi's impression of you is the same as seducing Meijio. They're both 0. Rain Murasame came over. Her eyes were filled with confusion. "You used seducing Meijio to deal with Tokisaki Kurumi?" "More or less." Wuxian nodded and immediately told Murasame Rain all the cause of everything, including the secret of Kamui's space imprisoning Shikaki Kurumi. "No wonder her impression of you is 0. After a while, Murasame Ling-in suddenly understood and immediately smiled bitterly. "To be honest, you are really a freak. They obviously hate you very much, but you use means to threaten them, and they are all very obedient. In addition to dating, this is also another shortcut to conquer the elves." "Bullshit shortcut. It's all because I'm strong." Dustless snorted and said disapprovingly, "If one day I become weak, Tokisaki Kurumi will definitely kill me, cut me into 8 pieces and whip my corpse. Seducing Meiji will probably do the same." The reason why they lowered their heads was because of Dustless's strength. "You know yourself well." Rain Murasame laughed and didn't deny it. After all, it was a fact. If Tokisaki Kurumi and seducing Meiji really had the means to deal with Dustless, they definitely wouldn't let him go easily. However, it's a pity that they won't have the chance to suppress me in this life. They are destined to crawl under my feet obediently. Dustless stared at Tokisaki Kurumi for a while and immediately went upstairs to sleep. He completely ignored Tokisaki Kurumi and Tokisaki Kurumi, who were arguing. No matter what, as long as they don't fight, they can do whatever they want. At the same time, in another direction. What an amazing guy. Even that Yuri girl was tamed? If this continues, we won't be able to do anything. That guy will capture all the elves in one fell swoop. In the DM company, Isaac Ray Pelham Wiskett, who was one of the company's top executives, looked down at the skyscrapers outside the window. He, who always looked confident, frowned deeply at this moment. His face was full of confusion. Until now, he still hadn't figured out what kind of person Wu Chen was and why he was so heaven-defying. His strength was unprecedentedly strong. Even the elf was crushed and subdued. Even the most difficult seducer Mei Jiu lowered her arrogant head at this moment. He's indeed very strange. The blonde beauty standing beside Isaac Ray Pelham Wiskett was Irene, who had a grudge with Dustless a while ago. She was also quite surprised. After all, seducing Mei Jiu was the most difficult Yuri to deal with, but she was still defeated by Dustless and lowered her arrogant head obediently. Even though they were enemies, Irene couldn't help but admire Dustless. You think that guy is amazing, don't you? At some point, Isaac Ray Pelham Wiskett had begun to stare at Ellen, and his bottomless eyes were suffused with a terrible oily light. No. That guy is just using some despicable and boring methods. How can he be compared to him? Irene felt uncomfortable being stared at. She quickly denied it loudly. No matter what, let's not care about other things. First, we have to deal with the problem of the princess. I remember Dustless named her Yuri Toka, right? It's a nice name, but it's a pity. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 reviews plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2149. No matter what, let's not care about anything else. First, we have to deal with the problem of the princess. I remember Dustless named her Night Blade God 10 Fragrances, right? It's a good name, but it's a pity. Isaac Ray Pelham Westcott muttered to himself. His gaze was deep as he stared at the tall buildings in the distance. His calm gaze suddenly revealed a monstrous ambition. If possible, it's best to capture that Dustless guy as well. Hearing this, Irene spat out all the hot water she drank. Her expression was extremely awkward. What's the problem? Or did I say something wrong? Isaac Ray Pelham Wiskett frowned and said in an unfriendly tone. His tone was very gloomy and cold. No. Realizing that she had lost her composure, Irene quickly apologized awkwardly. It's just that my stomach hasn't been feeling well recently. I'm feeling a little nauseous. Is that so? After taking a deep look at Irene, Isaac Ray Pelham Wiskett didn't bother to continue thinking about this issue. He just put his hands in his trouser pockets and his gaze was incomparably distant. That clear gaze seemed to be able to hide from him. Phew. Seeing that the shrewd and terrifying man in front of her was not acting strangely, Irene heaved a sigh of relief. Her current situation was like living with a king was like living with a tiger. She could not guess what Isaac Ray Pelham Westcott was thinking. Of course, there was also a unique pressure. The fear of a superior. The reason why she spat out the water just now was because Irene felt that Westcott's thoughts were too naive. Was Dustless someone that could be captured just because he wanted to? It was not that simple. To put it bluntly, when facing Dustless, Irene did not have the slightest confidence. Not to mention capturing Dustless alive, it would be a blessing from the heavens if she was not captured alive. Please don't ask me to deal with that damn pervert. Thinking of how terrifying Dustless was, Irene could not help but shiver. She could not help but pray in her heart. She really did not want to fight with Dustless. She was not a match for him at all. Or to put it bluntly, it was suicide. Irene, I have something for you to do. At the same time, Westcott suddenly turned around and stared at Irene. His gaze was so bright that it could melt a person. Don't tell me, he wants me to deal with Dustless? The corners of Irene's mouth twitched a few times, but she could only bite the bullet and say, "Please speak, Your Excellency. I'll leave the task of dealing with Daoist and Zhou Xian and Dustless to you. Don't disappoint me," Westcott said in a serious tone. His expression was meticulous and it was obvious that he wasn't joking. Finally, he instructed, "Remember, you must capture the two of them. That's easy for you to say. One of them is an elf and the other's strength is unfathomable. At the very least, he's stronger than the elves. Do you think I'm a god?" As Westcott's subordinate, it was her duty to take care of Dustless and the elf. However, Dustless was too strong, so strong that she couldn't handle him. "I'll do my best." Looking at Westcott's eyes, Irene sighed and could only grit her teeth and agree. "Very well, I hope you succeed." Westcott revealed a gratified smile and gave her an encouraging look. Don't disappoint me, Irene. Irene fell silent and nodded. Since there was no way out, she could only walk this path to the end. Thinking of this, Irene's unfocused gaze gradually became firm. Even though she knew that Westcott was pushing her into a fire pit, Irene chose to carry out the task without hesitation. After all, this was the meaning of her existence. It was also time for her to show her worth. The sky gradually turned dark. Cold winds swept across the vast land. Tonight's night was especially bleak. Even the moon was very blurry, hiding in the clouds as if it was hiding from something. From the day until now, Toka and the rest had been mocking Toshiaki Kurumi. They were like fire and water, staring at each other whenever they met. However, Toshiaki Kurumi was indeed Toshiaki Kurumi. She was indeed different from the rest. She didn't fall into a disadvantageous position when facing off against the girls. If it weren't for Dustless suppressing her, they would have already started fighting. Bang! 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 The peaceful night was suddenly filled with the sound of things being smashed. It was extremely messy and one could even hear the sound of shouting. It's already midnight. Are they still quarreling? Young people are really energetic. Dustless popped his head out from under the blanket and was speechless. Toshiaki and the rest could be considered to have set a record by quarreling for a few hours. Especially now, they didn't show any signs of stopping. Instead, they were getting more and more intense. It was truly admirable. Forget it. Let's go and persuade them. Dustless put on his slippers. It was the middle of the night and he couldn't sleep because of their quarreling. Moreover, Toshiaki Kurumi's spiritual power was not sealed yet. It would be too late for regrets if she got angry and did something out of line. Was it an illusion? Suddenly, Dustless turned his head and stared at the dark window. The bright moonlight was clearly visible. In that instant he felt an unfamiliar aura. Don't come over. Go away or I'll beat you to death. However, after a few seconds, the screams of the Night Blade God 10 fragrances resounded throughout the area. It wasn't an illusion. There really is an intruder. How bold. Dustless quickened his pace and quickly walked towards the room of the Saber God 10 fragrances. He had already guessed who this mysterious intruder was. Bang! He kicked open the door and a familiar figure came into view. Irene, it's really you. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2150. Have I been discovered? Seeing Dustless's figure, Irene could not help but feel guilty and had a headache. The owner of the indifferent gaze in front of her was just too powerful. He was so powerful that she could not handle him. He was so powerful that he could kill her at any time without breaking a sweat. Dustless, save me. Beat this bad woman away. Night Sword God 10 Fragrance, who was restrained by Irene, hurriedly shouted. At this moment she was only wearing simple pajamas. She was completely restrained by Irene and could not move. Night Sword God 10 Fragrance looked at Dustless pitifully. He felt very wronged. Let her go, Irene. Dustless looked at Irene indifferently. His tone was calm and there was no trace of anger. It was as if he was narrating an extremely ordinary matter. Watch your tone. Don't talk to me like you're my boss. Irene frowned slightly and looked at Dustless with a rather unhappy expression. His seemingly calm tone contained a sense of supremacy. To put it simply, it was an order to Irene. I'm sorry, I can't accept this. This is an order from above. I'm just carrying out my mission. If you don't want to be my enemy, then quickly disappear from my sight. Irene said expressionlessly. She pretended to be calm on the surface, but her heart was extremely bitter. She only wanted to take 10 fragrance away without anyone knowing. However, the latter violently resisted. Even if her power was sealed, the commotion caused was rather big. In the end, it still alarmed Dustless. Sigh, what a foolish woman. After staring at Irene for a while, Dustless suddenly sighed and asked, You clearly know that you are no match for me, yet you still dare to challenge me. The person who asked you to carry out the order is obviously pushing you into the fire pit. The most ridiculous thing is that a foolish woman like you still accepted this kind of mission. How foolish and ignorant. So what? There are some things that I don't have a choice in. Irene's eyes dimmed slightly. From a certain perspective, Wuxia was indirectly asking her to commit suicide. After all, challenging Dustless was equivalent to courting death. What a foolish woman. Seeing Irene's stubborn look, Dustless gently shook his head and said seriously, Miss Irene, let go. You can't take 10 fragrances away. Really? Hearing this, Irene smiled confidently and suddenly locked Toka's throat. Dustless, I know you're very powerful, but if you don't want this girl to die, then get out of my way. In other words, are you threatening me? Narrowing his eyes, Dustless's eyes flickered with an ominous light. Since you're threatening me, then don't blame me for being ruthless. So. As soon as he finished speaking, Silver's body suddenly disappeared, leaving only a dazzling flash. Despicable fellow. Seeing this, Irene's mouth twitched violently. Seeing that Dustless had disappeared and the entire room was left with a sky full of light, she immediately grabbed Night Sword God 10 fragrances and meticulously observed the changes in her surroundings. She looked behind her from time to time and looked to her left and right. Her suspicious look was rather comical. It was hard to imagine that this was the world's #1 magician. What ability is this? After carefully sensing for a while, Irene's expression changed drastically. She was sure that Dustless was in this room, but the strange thing was that other than the sky full of light, there was no one else who could see it. This was like the enemy was right in front of you, but you couldn't find him no matter how hard you tried. The world's #1 magician? Although your strength is weak, your intuition as a woman is praiseworthy. A faint ripple appeared in the void, followed by Dustless's cold voice. Just as Irene had guessed, Dustless was in this room at the moment, but Irene was helpless because she couldn't capture Dustless's physical body at all. Pretending to be mysterious, come out if you're a man. Irene shouted coldly, trying to anger Dustless. You're definitely the most cowardly man I've ever seen, too useless. Hee. Unexpectedly, Dustless wasn't angry, instead he laughed strangely. Seductive Beauty Jew also said this to me. He once asked me if I was a man and my answer was, do you need to personally experience whether I'm a man or not? What about you now? You're shameless. Hearing this, Irene's face turned red. She didn't expect that Dustless, who usually looked like a refined and well-behaved person, would become the reincarnation of a pervert at this moment. The meaning behind his words was that he wanted Irene to use her body to prove whether Dustless was a man or not. Although I've killed countless people, I still have a bottom line. Those who are obedient and tactful, I don't mind showing mercy to them, but if they're blindly ignorant, then don't blame me for being ruthless. The emptiness in the room flickered, followed by Dustless's voice. Could it be? Carefully looking at the floating light, Irene guessed. Could it be that these photons are Dustless? Damn it, how am I supposed to attack him? He doesn't even have a physical body. That way court fellow really sent me to my death. Although the enemy was close at hand, he didn't even have a physical body. How was she supposed to fight? How about this, Irene? You rely on me and I'll kill the man who instigated you to capture 10 fragrance, and from then on, you'll be mine. Dustless instigated with a smirk. You know very well that Wei Court is just a simple human. There's nothing special about him that's worth pursuing. If you rely on me, your future will be bright and you'll be able to see a bigger world. Anyway, there was a lot of space in the system, and with Irene, Dustless could afford to raise her. P.S. 3,000 fresh flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2151. Rely on you. Hearing this, a bright light flashed across Irene's eyes. It was as fast as lightning, disappearing in less than a second. She's really moved. I told you, as long as she has ambition, as long as she's ambitious, she'll be able to see how special I am. Relying on me is just a matter of benefits. Even though the light in Irene's eyes disappeared in an instant, Dustless saw it clearly. He immediately understood that Irene was moved. However, this was normal. After all, Wei Court was just a human. No matter how great his achievements were in the future, they were already fixed. On the other hand, Dustless had a mysterious background and was unrivaled in strength. Clearly he had a better future. Secondly, Wei Court had sent Irene to challenge Dustless. She knew that she would be crushed, but she was still sent to her death. Irene's heart was already somewhat conflicted. That's right, rely on me. A fine bird chooses a fine tree to nest in. You can choose for yourself. Dustless's mouth was as sweet as honey. He enticingly said, what Wei Court can give you, I can also give you. What he can't give you, I can also give you. Why should I believe you? Although she was somewhat moved, Irene was still somewhat hesitant. Dustless wanted to gain something without risking anything. There was no way he could fool her with an empty promise. Why? Because of this. Dustless looked at Irene with disdain and clenched his fists. He raised his voice. Because I'm stronger than you, that's all. Nonsense. In the end, you're still trying to trick me into killing Wei Court. Irene coldly snorted. She grabbed Toka tightly and looked at Dustless as if she was facing a great enemy. Bad woman, Dustless has no reason to lie to you. Toka also took the opportunity to speak. He said seriously, Dustless was the one who took me in back then. He's very good to me. There's no reason to lie to you, nor is there a reason. Dustless had accompanied Yadao God Toka to go shopping, go on dates, go to the movies. Especially when he bought all kinds of delicious food for free. That's because you're too stupid and too naive. Don't treat everyone as a foodie like you. Irene looked at Toka disapprovingly. Dustless was able to conquer Toka with just food. This only meant that she was too naive and could eat too much. After wasting half a day of my time, you still don't understand. Dustless realized that Irene was still on guard against him. The gentleness on his face gradually disappeared. Since you don't listen to me, I can only use my strength to trample you. Swish, swish, swish. As soon as he finished speaking, the sharp sound of something breaking through the air resounded through the entire house. In an instant, Nightblade God Toxiang seemed to have been invaded by the sun. The bright light was extremely dazzling. Countless rays of light converged and emitted a scorching light. So dazzling. Irene quickly closed her eyes. If she looked at the ball of light for one more second, her eyes would be blinded. The moment Irene closed her eyes, a black shadow suddenly appeared in front of her. It directly pushed Irene's arm away and snatched Nightblade God Toka away. Damn it! Realizing that she was empty-handed and that Nightblade God Toka was suddenly snatched away by Dustless, Irene immediately lowered her head and cursed. She suddenly opened her eyes and endured the discomfort in her eyes. Her gaze was locked on Dustless, who was close at hand. In just a moment, the equipment of AST members appeared on her body. Her equipment was different from those of Liaozi Under the Sun, Tokichi Origami and the others. She also held a sharp beam saber in her hand. A rare display device. Staring at the imposing Irene, who was glaring at him with hostility, Dustless smiled carelessly. But if you think that this kind of scrap metal can deal with me, it only shows that you're too naive. Scrap metal. Hearing this, Irene's little face darkened. She was hit hard by Dustless's words. The display device she used was very different from the display devices used by AST members. It was more powerful and designed in more areas. It was much more advanced than the display devices of Tokichi Origami and the others. But at this moment, it became the scrap metal in Dustless's mouth. This was naked slander and disdain. You'll regret this. Irene's little face changed dramatically. She held the beam saber in her hand and slashed horizontally. Her speed was extremely fast. In just a blink of an eye, the beam saber held by Irene hit Dustless's head. Dustless's whole body was suddenly split into two. It was easily split into two by the beam saber. This disgusting ability again. Don't tell me there's no flaw? Witnessing Dustless being instantly killed, Irene wasn't happy at all. Dustless, who had been split in half, only turned into a sparkling photon. Then he was perfectly restored to his original state. That hateful face was restored once again. You're too weak, Dustless said softly. His tone was very light, but when it fell on Irene's ears, it was as heavy as Mount Tai. He mocked her for being a frog at the bottom of a well. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. In anger, Irene once again slashed the beam saber at Dustless. Clang clang. This time, Dustless obviously did not want to continue playing house with Irene. Seeing the beam saber coming at him, he calmly reached out and grabbed it. His big hand was hit by the beam saber and made a crisp roar. It was like hitting steel. Bright sparks flashed in an instant. Why is this guy's hand so hard? Ai Lian looked at Wu Qin in astonishment. She stared at his fair right hand, which was holding the beam saber calmly. He was safe and sound. Nothing happened to him at all. Ka ka ka. Dustless exerted a little force. The beam saber in his hand suddenly had cracks visible to the naked eye on its surface. The cracks spread to the entire blade at an extremely fast speed. How strong is this damn pervert? He actually crushed my weapon with his bare hands. Irene looked at Dustless in a daze. Her gaze was as if she was looking at a monster. P.S. 3,000 fresh flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2152. Irene was dumbfounded. Crushing her beam saber with pure strength, what kind of shocking strength was that? He was like a monster with unlimited potential. And the most shocking thing was that Dustless's calm expression did not change at all. On his cheeks, these words were clearly written. I didn't use my full strength. You think you're strong? Wuxian laughed involuntarily when he saw Irene's disbelieving and astonished appearance, and he spoke words that struck Irene extremely hard. I might as well tell you directly. Among the enemies that I've fought, you absolutely belong to the weakest group of people. Don't be too arrogant. Irene's pretty face showed a hint of anger. She always felt that Dustless was ridiculing her. So what if you're strong? Why are you always so narrow-minded? Dustless looked straight at Irene. If he knew what she was thinking, he would definitely feel wronged. Speaking the truth, he would also be considered narrow-minded. It's not that easy to take me down. Irene looked at Dustless with a slightly smug look. A transparent pink light gradually appeared on the surface of her body. Following that, an emerald green protective cover suddenly covered Irene's body. She was isolated from the outside world and was in a special domain. Being wrapped in this mysterious protective cover, Irene felt more at ease. A faint smile bloomed on her face. At least before you break my domain of will, I will never admit defeat. Domain of will. Hearing that, Wuxian took a closer look at the rain shield. After a long while, he said disdainfully, it's just a piece of broken paper. Why do they have to give it an elegant name? Random field. It's really disgusting. It's just a piece of scrap paper that will break with a touch. Pretending to be cultured, vulgar to the extreme. You bastard, watch your words. Irene looked at Dustless in a frenzy. He almost fell down because of these words. A broken piece of paper defense. It was simply nonsense. Irene's phenomenon device was of a higher level than everyone in AST. There was no doubt that the so-called domain of will was stronger. Now that Dustless said that it was a broken piece of paper defense that would break with a touch, how could she not be angry? This stinky man really looked down on others. Why don't we make a bet? Irene looked deeply at Dustless and said in a deep voice, if you can defeat this random field, then I will be yours from now on. If you can't defeat my defense, then you and I, Nightblade God Toka, will have to leave with me. Huh. Hearing this, he was stunned at first. Then he looked at Irene with an idiotic expression and said disdainfully, silly girl, you think too highly of yourself. You think you can match up to the two of us? Could it be that you're the reincarnation of a deity? Are you that valuable? Irene was incomparably embarrassed. Only now did she abruptly recall the situation she was in. Right now, whether or not she could safely leave this place alive was already a problem, let alone negotiate with Dustless here. But I promise you. Anyway, the end result will be the same. Let's not waste any more time. After a moment of silence, Dustless suddenly agreed to Irene's condition. Anyway, you will lose everything. From now on, you will be my servant, Miss Irene. Oh no, I should change the name Servant of Irene. You, stop talking nonsense. Since you've agreed to the bet, then do it. The corner of Irene's mouth twitched violently. Dustless's words were always so harsh and unpleasant to the ear. This guy's ability to escape with his mouth seemed to be stronger than his strength. Bang! Who would have thought that the moment Irene's voice fell, a silent explosion came from the random field, followed by a caw-caw-caw sound that spread out. How is this possible? Hearing this crisp shattering sound, Irene's heart was filled with a huge sense of unease. She suddenly raised her head and saw that the seemingly sturdy Irene's random field had a crack the size of a finger on it. What kind of joke is this? It looks like a weak punch. How could it break the random field? Just how strong was this force? Could it be that Godzilla in the anime is disguised as a human? Irene covered her cherry blossom mouth with both hands, the shock on her face difficult to conceal. Dustless's move was not the slightest bit flashy, it was just an extremely simple punch. But the strange thing was that the supposedly invincible random field collapsed in an instant. It should be understood that even if the random field of the AST member's display device was the random field, it was impossible for the elfin to break it with a punch. Not to mention the complexity of Irene's set of equipment, it was far beyond the display device used by the AST members. It was simply not on the same level. But the strange thing was that Dustless still broke it with a punch. Bang! In the end, the random field completely collapsed, turning into countless glass-like fragments. Irene's whole body was once again exposed to Dustless's sight. Her expression was dull and numb. She was shocked to the point of being absent-minded. Her eyes were fixed on Dustless as if she was trying to figure out his origin. Why are you still in a daze? Now you're my servant, right? Be clear about your own identity. Is it something a servant should do to look at your master without any hesitation? Dustless's sudden words gave Irene goosebumps. She recalled the previous bet and regretted it. She stared at Dustless's cheeks that deserved a beating. Even if she was very unhappy, she could only endure it humbly. In the end, she sighed helplessly, lowered her proud head, and looked at Dustless in a submissive tone. Master, if you have any orders for me to do, just say it. Irene did not have the slightest way to resist. Since she lost, she lost. From now on, she was Dustless's servant. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 reviews plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2153. That's a good girl. Hearing this, Wuxian smiled with deep gratification. He was quite satisfied in his heart. It was nothing to conquer a woman, but it was a real ability to make a woman who hated him obedient. Let's see if you're useful or not in case you shoot yourself in the foot. It would be a tragedy if you only pretend to obey me. Dustless stroked his chin and walked around Irene twice with a teasing look on his face. No, master, what do you want me to do? Irene asked respectfully. She secretly glanced at Dustless from the corner of her eyes, feeling nervous. Especially when she saw the faint smile on Dustless's face, Irene felt even more uneasy. You've got guts. You actually dared to look at me. Do you know your crime? After a moment of silence, Dustless asked in an extremely unfriendly tone. I'm guilty just because I looked at you? Irene was speechless and blushed. She didn't expect to be caught spying on Dustless. She felt quite embarrassed. However, what made her angry was that she was guilty just by looking at Dustless. She had even touched him just now. Shouldn't she be cut into pieces? Irene, you're on your own now. Zhou Xian's expression was also very strange. She stared at Dustless and saw the naughty smile on his face. She immediately knew that he was going to teach Irene a lesson. Maybe he's just testing me and doubting my loyalty. As long as I know what's good for me, it'll be fine. After thinking about it, Irene felt relieved. In this situation, as long as she lowered her stance, even if she was wrong, Dustless would definitely let her go. In the end, she would be fine. I'm sorry, master. I was rude. Irene said in a very humble tone. Good attitude. It's good that you know your mistake. Dustless's face bloomed with a very bright smile. His cheeks were also incomparably gentle, and his faint smile gave people a feeling of gentleness. Sure enough, it's just as I imagined. Next, you should let me go or just hand over the mission to me. Sure enough, I understand men's thoughts too well. After being Westcott's secretary for so many years, she had accumulated a wealth of life experience. Actually, Dustless was deliberately looking for trouble to test her attitude. Even if she wasn't wrong, she had to admit her mistake. She definitely couldn't question Dustless's decision. If she resisted, Dustless would definitely think that she was two-faced. But after a few seconds, Irene was dumbfounded. Since you know you're wrong, you can be exempted from the heavy punishment. I have to give you a warning. This time I'll be lenient with you. Wuxian looked at Irene benevolently and then said lazily. Irene's expression froze. She was a little angry in her heart. She cursed inwardly, this guy really doesn't play by the rules. I clearly didn't do anything wrong, but this guy just had to show me his strength. And now he wants to punish me. This is too much. Seeing Dustless's smiling face, Irene felt stifled and angry. She regretted saying, I know I was wrong. Dustless's smiling face seemed to be waiting for her to admit her mistake. Irene felt like she had been tricked. As long as Master is happy. Even though she was unhappy, Irene could only pinch her nose and accept it. She could only look at Dustless pitifully. She only hoped that this guy wouldn't go overboard. At least he wouldn't mess around. Irene, don't worry. I have always been a fair person. I can't tolerate sand in my eyes. Naturally, I won't deliberately make things difficult for you. Dustless promised solemnly. Irene was incomparably depressed. She thought to herself, what are you fair about? You're full of nonsense. This matter is clearly caused by you deliberately causing trouble for me, but you still dare to say that you're fair and impartial. You're too shameless. Ai Lian's gaze searched for traces of Dustless, but she noticed to her astonishment that Dustless had already vanished from her line of sight since an unknown time. Could it be that this guy's conscience is at ease and he can't bear to destroy me? Looking left and right, Irene didn't see any trace of Dustless. She suddenly felt relieved. She was really afraid that Dustless would mess around and do something crazy. Suddenly, Irene felt a chill in her lower body. She couldn't help but shiver. Irene instinctively screamed. Her words revealed endless fear. When she turned her head, she was surprised to see Dustless with a mischievous smile. His big hand had unknowingly lifted up Irene's clothes. Her white jade-like skin was exposed to the air. Hooligan, stay away from me. Irene looked at Dustless in horror. This guy was too scary. He changed his face just like that. Didn't he say that he wouldn't mess around? Have you forgotten my punishment? This is it. Dustless blinked innocently and said, You. Irene was furious. She raised her voice and angrily shouted, You said that you wouldn't deliberately make things difficult for me and would punish me lightly. Now you actually took off my pants. You're obviously deliberately embarrassing me. This is a lighter punishment. It's taking off your pants in public. Of course it's only in this house. Dustless said very casually. Immediately, he looked at Irene with a stern expression. Do you want to try a heavy punishment? That's fine too. As soon as his voice fell, Dustless began to take off his clothes. Stop. Irene panicked when she saw this. She quickly grabbed Dustless's hands tightly. If this guy was really honest with her, Irene felt that she wouldn't have the face to see anyone for the rest of her life. Thank you, Master, for your mercy. I'll take it off now. Irene resisted the urge to vomit blood. In the blink of an eye, there was only a pair of white pants left. After all, she still had Fatu to protect her. It was better than being punished by Dustless on the spot. You're still too weak to fight with me. Dustless was secretly pleased. A victorious look surged between his brows. Now he could confirm that Irene was really loyal to him. She had swallowed her anger, which indirectly showed that she was desperate. P.S. 3,000 fresh flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2154. Ai Lian wanted to cry but had no tears. She could only swallow the consequences of her own actions. It was useless to reason with a temperamental person like Wuxia. Just a moment ago he was still smiling like a good old man. Who would have thought that this guy was a natural performer? The speed at which he changed his face was really admirable. 1 second ago he was in front of the flowers and under the moonlight. But the next second he had a honeyed mouth and a dagger in his heart. Ai Lian felt that she was deeply harmed by him. What orders does Master have? Holding back the rage in her heart, Irene asked Dustless with a fake smile. At this moment she was completely naked. She was only wearing a Fatu bra. Her delicate white skin was perfectly exposed to Dustless's eyes. Why isn't this despicable guy looking at me directly? He's not even looking at me. Is he purposely messing with me? Irene saw Dustless closing his eyes in satisfaction, as if he wasn't interested in anything. She couldn't help but feel a little defeated. It's very simple. Go and help me get rid of that Weisskort now. Remember to destroy the corpse and destroy the evidence. Dustless spoke frankly. He drank a mouthful of tea to moisten his throat. Then he sneered and said, He actually dared to make a move on me. That guy is done for. If people don't offend me, I won't offend them. If people offend me, I'll pay them back 100-fold. Dustless naturally couldn't let the other party off the hook after being schemed against. Especially this Weisskort's DM society. It was an evil organization that targeted the elves. As long as the elves were alive, they wouldn't give up on their plans. They would continue to carry out all kinds of crazy and dark plans against the elves. In other words, as long as Dustless lived with the elves, the other party would definitely continue to provoke him. Since that was the case, he could only flatten them. This. Irene also vaguely guessed Dustless's motive. She said with some difficulty, "Although I'm very confident in my own strength, Weiss Court isn't an ordinary person. I'm afraid that I'll go for wool and come home shorn." "Don't worry and just do it. I don't ask for much. Just do your best. If you fail, run for your life." Dustless nodded faintly. Although Irene was being evasive, it was undeniable that this was the truth. The DM company was also a company with many hidden talents. What Irene said was also the truth. However, Dustless did not expect her to kill Westcott. This was just a proof of her allegiance. As long as Irene attacked DM and Westcott, it would indirectly mean that she was sincerely siding with him. Running for your life after failing? Irene was startled as she looked at Dustless's handsome face in surprise. His face was as calm as still water and his bright eyes were deep and calm. It was said that the eyes were the windows to the soul. Dustless's eyes were extremely calm and he didn't seem to be lying. Perhaps I've really followed the right person. Although this guy is temperamental sometimes, at least he won't make unreasonable requests. Also, like I said before, Dustless has a better future than Weiss Court. Irene's resistance towards Dustless also greatly reduced. It was rare to see a boss who understood his subordinates like this. "Then I'll take my leave, master." Irene lowered her head and said. As she spoke, she couldn't help but reveal a trace of respect. Subconsciously, she had already acknowledged Dustless. "Just do your best. There's no need to fight to the death with them." Dustless nodded slightly. After all, it was just a simple test. There was no need for Irene to risk her life. Then he waved his hand, indicating that Irene could leave. "Is it really appropriate to let her leave like this? She was just fighting and killing just now, and now she's suddenly your subordinate. This change is a little too fast." Night Sword God 10 Fragrance's head was still a little stuffy. Previously she had threatened to kill Dustless, but in the blink of an eye, she had become Dustless's subordinate. This ending was really shocking. What's the big deal? As the saying goes, plans can't keep up with changes. In life there are too many things that don't go your way. There's no perfect choice for her, so she can only choose the lesser of two evils. That's why that girl called Irene can only choose the most advantageous condition for herself. Just like me, since I don't want to die, I can only submit to this guy. Tokisaki Kurumi had appeared out of nowhere. She was dressed in a black lace robe, and her skin was faintly discernible. Her body exuded a refreshing fragrance that stirred one's blood. Every move and action of hers was captivating, making one's appetite whet. "Why are you wearing such revealing clothes? Damned seductress." Night Sword God 10 Fragrance glared at Tokisaki Kurumi as if she was a love rival. Then she hurriedly covered Dustless's eyes with her hands. "Don't look, this bad woman is too evil. What does it have to do with me?" Dustless didn't know whether to laugh or cry when Tokisaki Kurumi covered his eyes. He could only shake his head inwardly. Jealousy between women was truly a headache sometimes. However, Dustless had to admit that Tokisaki Kurumi was very good at dressing herself up. She was able to perfectly display her most charming parts. She was very mature and she was also very beautiful. Most men wouldn't be able to walk away when they saw her. This was the reason why Tokisaki Kurumi called her a vixen. Compared to Tokisaki Kurumi, the Night Sword God 10 Fragrance was too naive. Her thoughts were too narrow and she didn't know how to display her charm. Of course, it didn't mean that Tokisaki Kurumi was inferior to her. It was just that she didn't know much about men and women. Therefore, she was always at a disadvantage when she fought with Tokisaki Kurumi. To put it bluntly, you're just jealous. Tokisaki Kurumi revealed a look of disdain and smiled mischievously. "If you have a problem with me, you can also expose yourself like me. However, you must be able to let go." Tokisaki Kurumi looked at Tokisaki Kurumi provocatively. At the same time she flirted with Dustless and winked at him. It was obvious that she wanted him to thank her. "This woman is acting as if I ordered her to do so. Don't look at me like that or others will think that I'm the mastermind." Dustless was extremely embarrassed. He glared at Tokisaki Kurumi. He was sure that Itsuka Kotori and Tokisaki Kurumi would be led astray by her as time passed. P.S. 3,000 fresh flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 reviews plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2155. Toka is right this time. This woman is a vixen. A vixen with a belly full of evil tricks. She's always thinking of ways to frame me. Dustless agreed with Toka's point of view. Toka Kurumi also felt helpless at times. If Itsuka Kodori and the others were here, it would be inevitable for them to scold Dustless. However, it was worth mentioning that Rain Murasame tested her favorability with Toka Kurumi. Toka Kurumi's favorability towards Dustless was no longer 0. It had risen to 30%. Although it was still pitifully low, it was much better than 0. Shameless vixen, don't be too proud. Toka Kurumi stared at Toka Kurumi. Although she was stubborn, her eyes were shining. She seemed to be very tempted by Toka Kurumi's suggestion. Seriously, this little girl is too naive. He fell for my trick so easily. I was just saying it casually. I didn't expect her to really fall for me. Where did Dustless get his charm from? How could he make Toka Kurumi fall for him? God is unfair. Toka Kurumi couldn't help but mumble. She stared at Dustless deeply and then glanced at Toka Kurumi. She was secretly unhappy. In fact, Dustless did not do anything to Toka Kurumi. At least that was what Toka Kurumi thought. However, there was a saying that one should never guess a girl's thoughts. Unknowingly, Toka Kurumi was already dead set on Dustless. Is she really going to imitate me? This little girl always goes against me. I'm just purposely attacking her. If she really imitates me, wouldn't that be letting Dustless take advantage of her? Tokasaki Kurumi had a strange expression on her face as she stared at the Yato god Toka, whose eyes were filled with desire. She couldn't help but feel a little regretful. She wanted to trap Dustless on purpose. It would be best if Yato Dustless became the target of everyone's criticism. She wanted to wash away the humiliation that Dustless brought to her. But what if Yato god Toka decided to seduce Dustless? Wouldn't that be a huge loss? After all, Shizaki Kurumi's plan was to get all the elves to find trouble with Dustless. Even if he was unhappy, he wouldn't do anything to the elves. But if Toka really wanted to seduce Dustless, it would be unavoidable for Dustless to get intimate with him. However, Tokasaki Kurumi did not expect Toka to be so naive. Tokasaki Kurumi was simply playing with fire. Tokasaki Kurumi did not expect Toka to be so naive. Cough, cough, cough. Thinking of this, Tokasaki Kurumi coughed twice in an attempt to stop Yato god Toka. But just as she was about to speak, Yato god Toka left in a huff. Don't think that you're the only one who knows how to flirt. If you know it, so do I. In fact, I can do it better than you. Leaving these words behind, Yuso Toka disappeared without a trace, leaving behind Tokasaki Kurumi, who could only stare blankly. Teske serves you right. Looking at the stunned Tokasaki Kurumi, Dustless laughed at her misfortune. This woman who was full of evil tricks always went against him. She even tricked Dustless for no reason. Now she was caught in her own trap. This is the most tragic thing in the world. Dustless suddenly laughed. What do you mean? I don't know what you're talking about. Furrowing her brows, Tokasaki Kurumi asked with an unnatural expression. Sometimes plans always run counter to reality. She had to pretend that she did not know. Otherwise, if Dustless found out that she did not get her revenge and instead benefited Dustless, wouldn't she become a laughingstock? You don't know? Or are you pretending to be dumb? Dustless snorted in disdain and said with a smile, someone lifted a rock to smash someone else's foot. How vicious. However, as the saying goes, the net of heaven grinds slowly but surely. In the end, someone smashed her own foot. Don't you think this kind of person is ridiculous, Miss Tokasaki Kurumi? You. Tokasaki Kurumi was furious. Don't be too happy. Yato god Toka is a conservative girl. She might just be joking. Who knows? Dustless shrugged and looked at Tokasaki Kurumi with a smile. Anyway, thanks to you, I might be able to have a good eye in the future. After all, Toka's figure is not bad. She's very pleasing to the eye. Thank you very much. You're so cooperative in picking up girls. I'm embarrassed to have you as a servant. Dustless winked at Tokasaki Kurumi with a grateful expression. PFFF. Tokasaki Kurumi almost vomited blood. Her face was gloomy. She glared at Dustless and left in anger. It seemed like she went to Toka's room. She only wanted to provoke Yato god Toka and attack Dustless. If Yato god Toka really seduced Dustless because of her, then this brat would be too easy. You think you can fight with me? Little girl, you don't have any self-awareness. You're overestimating yourself. Seeing Tokisaki Kurumi leave in a huff, Dustless smiled and returned to his room to sleep. P.S. 3,000 fresh flowers plus updates, 3,000 tips plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2156. Naturally, Tokisaki Kurumi wanted to cry. It was exactly what she had imagined. After following Tokisaki to her bedroom, she found that Tokisaki was trying on some see-through pajamas. The ones that looked more seductive were the ones that Tokisaki Kurumi was trying on. Damn it. After trying for so long, I've already worn out my mouth. In the end, it was Dustless who took advantage of it. I won't allow this to happen. Tokisaki Kurumi stomped her feet. Tokisaki Kurumi didn't know whether to laugh or cry when she saw Tokisaki Kurumi talking about her while changing her pajamas. She was just trying to provoke Tokisaki Kurumi, but she didn't expect the naive Tokisaki Kurumi to believe her. She even swore that she would defeat her. This pure elf's thinking is too simple, even childish. She really can't be judged with common sense. Tokisaki Kurumi sighed in regret. Actually, it wasn't just Tokisaki Kurumi who was depressed. Everyone else was depressed as well. Damn corporation. The highest floor of a skyscraper that pierced through the clouds was extremely luxurious. The expensive decorations in the outside world were just ordinary things here. This was the office of Isaac Ray Pelham Westcott. As one of the higher-ups and even the controller of DM, it was normal for him to receive such treatment. At this moment he was in a dilemma. There was no other reason other than the blonde girl in front of him. Where is she? Did you say that you failed? You've disappointed me, Irene. Scott looked at the injured Irene with dissatisfaction in his eyes. There was even a bone-piercing chill in the depths of his eyes. It was fine that he couldn't take care of Dustless, but he couldn't even bring Tokisaki Kurumi back. How could Westcott not be angry? After all, the elves were his prey. No. Irene shook her head. Wrapped in bandages, Irene shook her head. Her attitude was colder and harsher than before. Even though a cold glint flashed past Westcott's eyes, she caught it clearly. After all, she wasn't an ordinary person. Oh, so you've succeeded? Hearing this, Westcott's lifeless eyes suddenly shot out a cold light. This. Irene sneered in her heart, but her expression didn't change. She said, I was seriously injured. That Dustless was too strong. I only caught, Princess, but because my injuries were too serious, I didn't bring her back. I just hid, Princess, in an abandoned warehouse near the battle. Not bad. You've done well. It's been hard on you, Irene. Scott smiled and nodded, his expression changing faster than one could flip a book. Bring me to see the princess. Finally getting a test subject, Westcott was very excited. He couldn't wait to look at Irene, his hopeful eyes clearly saying, hurry up and bring me to see the Night Blade God Toka. Understood. Irene nodded solemnly, but the corners of her mouth raised into an imperceptible cold arc. He had painstakingly tricked Scott out of the DM company in order to find a suitable environment to hunt Scott. After all, killing Scott in the DM company would cause a lot of trouble. Right here. Are you sure you didn't bring it to the wrong place? In the abandoned warehouse, Scott frowned. At this moment there was only him and Irene, there was no one else. The smell of this abandoned warehouse was very unpleasant. It was more like a garbage dump, and he could even hear the screams of rats. Of course. Irene glanced at Scott indifferently. Her attitude was no longer as respectful as before. Like a block of ice, her eyes stared at Scott without moving, occasionally flashing with cold light. What do you mean by this? Scott frowned. He could naturally feel the cold air from Irene's body. He was instantly infuriated. A clown dared to challenge him? To put it bluntly, Irene was just a tool for him to capture elves. But at this moment this tool dared to look at him like he was a prey. Wasn't this rebelling? What do I mean? Don't you know this? What an idiot. Don't you think this place is very suitable for a graveyard? No one would know if someone died. A cold voice suddenly came out from the corner of her mouth. Irene looked at the stunned Scott with a sneer. You dare to scold me? Scott looked as if he was struck by lightning. He looked at Irene in a daze. He didn't expect that this subordinate who was usually respectful to him would call him an idiot at this moment. Figure out your identity. Don't forget who gave you this favor. Scott was furious and said sternly, I can ruin your reputation at any time and even take your life. You know my ability. Whether I'm speaking nonsense or not, you know best in your heart. As a senior of the DM company, Wei Scott's ability was indeed extraordinary. But this wasn't a reason for Irene to be afraid of him. Irene sneered and said, "However, before my reputation is ruined, you will definitely be finished." Irene's expression was cold as she pounced at Wei Scott with lightning speed. So fast. Wei Scott's pupils suddenly shrank a few times. He exclaimed that she was indeed the most powerful magician among humans. In the blink of an eye, she launched a thunderous attack. Bam! A kick came and Wei Scott's body trembled. His face was as pale as snow, and his internal organs were shaking violently. Faint traces of blood flowed out from the corner of his mouth. This kick didn't show any mercy and wanted to end Wei Scott's life. "You dare to betray me?" Wei Scott was kicked back repeatedly. Fortunately, he had his own secrets and was only lightly injured in the end. But his face was very interesting. Green and white alternated, and his hair was about to stand up from anger. All this time he was the one who schemed against others. Who dared to scheme against him? But now he was tricked by someone else. Moreover, it was his most loyal subordinate. How could Wei Scott not be angry? "I want you to die without a burial place." Wei Scott's eyes were spitting fire. He was smart all his life, but he was stupid at this moment. He didn't expect to be tricked by his own subordinate. This was a great humiliation. P.S. 3,000 rewards, 3,000 fresh flowers, 1,000 comments, 500 automatic subscriptions. Chapter 2157. As a confident and successful man, betrayal was a taboo, especially for a man like Westcott who had a strong sense of control. The higher he stood at the top of the pyramid, the more he was afraid of failure. He could not tolerate even a speck of sand in his eyes, not to mention that he had been plotted against by his subordinates. This was worse than death. "Before I destroy you, I have a question you must answer." Suddenly realizing something, Westcott's expression was extremely gloomy. He looked straight at the girl's perfect face and held back his anger. He gritted his teeth and asked, "What's the reason? Why did you betray me? Is there someone more worthy of your loyalty than me?" "Well, it's very simple." Irene looked at Westcott with contempt and said calmly, "Actually, I feel that my wings have hardened and I don't need you anymore. Is that okay?" Unknowingly, Irene had also been infected by Dustless and her words had become infuriating. Pfft. Hearing this, Westcott immediately spat out a mouthful of blood and looked at Irene angrily. What kind of ridiculous reason was this? What did she mean by, "My wings have hardened and I don't need you anymore"? Was there a more arrogant reason than this? This was simply a slap in the face and disdain. "No one has ever dared to speak to me like this. You are the first and you will also die a horrible death." Westcott roared, his handsome face twisted. Irene's words had trampled on his dignity, and the consequences were even worse than beating him up. "Then I'm sorry. I was thinking that it would be best if you could commit suicide, then I wouldn't have to do it myself. After all, we are acquaintances." Irene was tit for tat, completely different from her usual quiet self. Her aura was strong and confident, and her whole body radiated a spirit that was not inferior to men. Her eyes stared straight at Westcott, occasionally flashing with undisguised contempt. It was obvious that she did not take Westcott seriously. "Compared to Dustless, you are far inferior in every aspect." After pondering for a while, Irene's eyes were filled with disdain as she spoke of the instigator behind the scenes. "As expected. It's that bastard." Hearing this, Westcott was furious, but he did not feel surprised. He only felt that it was ironic. He had sent Irene to assassinate Dustless and Night Sword God Toka, but in the end his trusted subordinate had jumped ship. This was a great humiliation. "Shut up. You're nothing compared to him. You're just a rat hiding in the dark." Hearing that Wei Scott dared to scold her boss, Irene's expression turned cold. With a flash, she appeared in front of Wei Scott without any warning. But when the slap landed, a glaring blood-red handprint appeared on Wei Scott's face. "How dare you slap me?" After being stunned for a moment, Westcott finally realized that he had been slapped by Aileen. He felt as if his lungs were about to explode. How aggrieved was it to be slapped by a traitor? "I'm not just going to slap you. I'm going to kill you." Irene looked at Westcott expressionlessly. Her tone was filled with killing intent. Clearly she wasn't joking. Kill me. Wei Scott sneered like a cunning wolf. His eyes glowed with a ghostly green light. You're underestimating me. If I could be killed so easily, I would have died a long time ago. Time flew and 3 days passed in the blink of an eye. It's been so long. Why hasn't Irene returned? Could it be that she failed? That shouldn't be. Although Irene's strength is no match for mine, it's more than enough to take care of Wei Scott. In Itsuka Kotori's house, Dustless looked at the blue sky in the distance. He lowered his head and pondered. Could it be that Wei Scott still has a trump card to deal with Irene? Maybe there really is. That guy is very scheming. Itsuka Kotori suddenly interrupted. Her face was tense and she was very cautious. She wasn't this nervous when she met the elves. That guy is not simple. He might have some tricks up his sleeve. But there's another possibility. Itsuka Kotori suddenly changed the topic. She looked at Dustless with a gloating expression. Maybe Irene submitted to you because she wanted to buy time. Do you know what I mean? Dustless. Maybe Irene was just pretending to submit to you so that she could escape. Kotori. It's not a good habit to talk about other people behind their backs. Dustless glanced at Itsuka Kotori and said confidently. You're right. But I believe in Irene. She knows what's best for her. Hey, you're just being unreasonable. Then why don't you explain why she hasn't returned for 3 days? Itsuka Kotori chewed on her lollipop and looked at Dustless with arrogance in her eyes. Maybe it's because of an accident. Dustless shook his head. He wasn't an omniscient god. How would he know? Then he suddenly said, but it might be as you guessed before. Irene has encountered some big trouble that she can't solve. Bang. Dustless opened his mouth and was about to say something. Suddenly the closed door was opened by a huge force. Rain. Dustless looked at the hurried Murasame Rain with surprise. He was surprised. For a long time Murasame Rain was the kind of extremely quiet type. She was rarely so rude. Commander, I don't know why. Fido is missing. Murasame Rain looked at Itsuka Kotori and revealed the news she just got. P.S. 3,000 fresh flowers plus more chapters, 3,000 rewards plus more chapters, 1,000 comments plus more chapters, 500 automatic subscriptions plus more chapters. Chapter 2158. Shido is missing? How is that possible? Itsuka Kotori was stunned for a moment, and then she muttered to herself in disbelief. Her delicate face turned ugly and her delicate fists were clenched tightly. After all, Itsuka Shido was Kotori's only family, and there was no doubt about their relationship. Since they were young, Kotori's favorability toward Itsuka Shido was 100%. Missing? That's strange. Dustless was also shocked when he heard Rain Murasame's report. He carefully recalled the original plot, and he didn't remember Itsuka Shido going missing. Maybe he was kidnapped. Dustless narrowed his eyes and said, that kid is very special, maybe he was captured alive and used. Think so too. Rain Murasame agreed with Dustless's opinion and nodded carefully. I asked Shido's classmates and many of them said that he was strange these days and he seemed to be absent-minded. Damn it. Who did it? Itsuka Kotori angrily knocked on the table and at this moment she was like a huge barrel of gunpowder, and her anger could be felt no matter how far away she was. Not good. Rain Murasame looked at the angry Itsuka Kotori and she was worried. If the elf's emotions were out of control, the consequences would be very serious. Even if Itsuka Kotori's spiritual power was sealed by Dustless, the consequences would be unimaginable. Oh, this is... Dustless frowned slightly and suddenly he felt that some kind of power in his body was disappearing. He couldn't help but look at the angry Itsuka Kotori, and he could feel that Itsuka Kotori's power was gradually increasing and he was surprised. Is this spiritual power reversal? Don't worry. Dustless gently patted Itsuka Kotori's shoulder and comforted her. Kotori, don't worry, in fact the culprit is already out. In this world other than Aesi. Who else could it be? Are you saying... Hearing this, Itsuka Kotori felt a little better and her emotions gradually calmed down. Her eyes lit up and she sneered. You mean DM? That's right, those guys are the most suspicious. Who else but them? That kid Westcott is very interested in the power of the elves, but he hasn't given up after Irene's failure. I'm afraid he'll use other tactics such as capturing Itoka Shido alive to threaten us into handing over the elves. Dustless shrugged and said bluntly, "Previously I ordered Irene to assassinate DIM's top executive, Westcott, but she hasn't returned yet. I'm afraid there's also a problem. I'm afraid it was that bastard Westcott who did it." Itsuka Kodori slammed her fist on the table with murderous intent. Her pink eyes were filled with murderous intent and filled with an ominous, sinister aura. "Is there any specific information?" Dustless looked at Murasame Rain. He was quite confident in the intelligence collection of Ratatosker. Murasame Rain must have collected some evidence. "There are some, but I don't understand it." Murasame Rain said helplessly, "I don't know much, but I'm afraid it was done by DIM." "Say it." Itsuka Kodori only said one word, but whether it was Dustless or Murasame Rain, they all felt a chill. "That kid is better off dead." Seeing Itsuka Kodori like this, Dustless prayed sincerely in his heart, and suddenly he felt that Itoka Shido was very annoying. Murasame Rain also looked at Itsuka Kodori a few more times and immediately said seriously, "During this period many people saw Shido take the initiative to get into a black car. I investigated according to the license plate number and found that although it's not from DIM, it has a lot to do with them. Humph. Sure enough, it's those guys." Hearing this, Itsuka Kodori suddenly became angry and stood up angrily. It seemed that she was going to find trouble directly. "But we haven't figured out the reason yet. Even if we find them, we have no excuse. After all, Shido took the initiative to go with others." Murasame Rain was quite helpless. In addition to Shido himself, maybe it's because of other people. Don't forget there's also a little girl that Itsuka Shido cares about very much. Dustless suddenly took a sip of tea and immediately said calmly, "I remember that Itsuka Shido has a little sister, seems to be called Chong Gong Shina, seems to be from DIM. As long as they use her as a threat, Itsuka Shido will definitely take the bait." Boom. Perhaps because of the reverse flow of spiritual power, Itsuka Kodori's strength became a lot stronger, and she directly smashed the table and said angrily, "Those guys are really despicable, damn it. Although it's just a guess, it's not impossible. Shurdao is such a sentimental person." Murasame Rain also sighed. She knew what kind of person Itsuka Shido was. As long as the other party used Chong Gong Shina as a threat, Itsuka Shido would definitely take the bait, and he would be the kind of person who would never back down. "It just so happens that I'm also going to DIM. I'm also looking forward to seeing what that kid has." Dustless's eyes were cold and he smiled sinisterly. "Although I don't know why Irene didn't come back, I'm sure that it's Scott who did it. He's just an ant, but he has guts." After all, Irene had already followed him, and Dustless naturally couldn't be indifferent when she went missing. "Hugh?" Itsuka Kodori took a deep breath, trying to calm down her bad mood, and said seriously, "That's good, Rain, you go and prepare now and bring me all the information about DIM." "Wait a moment, Commander." Murasame Rain nodded and left. She couldn't help but mourn for Scott. If he offended these two, she was afraid that his end would be extremely miserable. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2159. She knew Itsuka Kodori's temper. Even if she hurt herself, she wouldn't hurt Itsuka Shido. Otherwise, this little girl would go berserk. In the original work, it was because Toshisaki Kurumi injured Itsuka Shido that Itsuka Kodori went berserk. Her spiritual energy reversed and she turned into a spirit. She displayed her powerful strength and defeated Toshisaki Kurumi, almost killing him in the end. After dealing with that arrogant idiot, it's about time to leave. Dustless muttered to himself as he looked at the warm sun outside the window. The idiot he was talking about was Wei Court. Dustless stretched his back and squinted his eyes in enjoyment. Although this kind of life was comfortable and unrestrained, it gradually became boring as time passed. No matter what it was, whether it was people or things, as time passed the feelings would fade away. The interest in the beginning would turn into boredom. Leave after success? Itsuka Kodori looked over. Even though Dustless was muttering to himself, she could still hear him clearly. She couldn't help but ask strangely, "Are you going to leave? Do you still have a home?" "All good things must come to an end." Dustless nodded and looked at the dazed Itsuka Kodori's face. He smiled and said, "What's wrong? You've never been good to me, so why are you looking so pitiful now? Can't bear to part with me?" Dustless got closer to Itsuka Kodori and looked at her beautiful face with a teasing expression. After hearing Dustless's words, Itsuka Kotori's unnatural expression quickly disappeared. She said with disdain, "Who would like a lecherous man like you? Stop dreaming. Do you think I'm a glutton like Toshiaki? That I can't even find my way around because of some soybean flour bread?" Dustless didn't get angry. Instead he smiled as if Itsuka Kotori wasn't talking about him. "You're really heartless. To think I wanted to take you with me. Of course." Hearing this, the joy in Itsuka Kotori's eyes disappeared instantly. Her expression changed at lightning speed. She looked at Wuxian with disdain and snorted. "There are countless people who like me. Even if I wait for a few decades, it won't be your turn. This girl really likes to push her luck." Dustless didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He had seen many narcissistic and arrogant people, but it was rare to see someone as arrogant as Itsuka Kotori. Dong dong dong. At this time the sound of high-heeled shoes was heard again. Wuxian and Kotori looked over and saw Murasame Rain's voice. "You're here already? Rain, you've collected all information about Wei Court?" Itsuka Kotori saw Rain Murasame, who left for less than 2 minutes, and ordered in a low voice, "Go and check it again. I want all the details. Well, Court is very mysterious. Everything about him must be. Looks like it's not necessary." Before Itsuka Kotori could finish, Dustless interrupted her. He saw the anxiety in Murasame Rain's eyes and shrugged. "I'm afraid there's a new problem. I just changed my clothes and was about to go out when I saw a letter at the door." Murasame Rain put the letter on the table, and the sender was Wei Court. "That guy wrote a letter?" Dustless curled his lips and said with disdain, "He's just a small fry. Why would he write a letter? Idiot." Murasame Rain and Itsuka Kotori looked at Dustless speechlessly. They didn't know what this guy was thinking. "What did it have to do with you?" Ahem. Noticing that the two women were looking at him strangely, Wuxian coughed awkwardly. "I mean, the content of this letter is probably a challenge letter or a threat letter. That stinky bug is about to lose his life, but he still wants to play this game. Isn't he asking for humiliation? He's asking to be humiliated. I'd like to see what kind of tricks Wei Court is going to play." Itsuka Kotori opened the envelope and took out the letter. She squinted her eyes and looked at it carefully for a while. Bang! A few minutes later, Itsuka Kotori angrily slammed the table and said with hatred, "That guy really caught Shido and asked me to give him all the elves, or else." "Or else what?" Murasame Rain asked nervously. Seeing Itsuka Kotori's pale face, she vaguely guessed something. "Do you still need to say it?" "Of course it's to kill them." Wuxian gulped down a mouthful of tea. There was a faint evil smile at the corner of his mouth. He was not worried at all. Instead, he took pleasure in other people's misfortune. He could not help but laugh secretly. "If Itoka Shido can be killed, I will be merciful and grant Wei Scott a complete corpse." In fact, he didn't like Itsuka Shido for a long time. This guy didn't have any power at all, but he still wanted to save the elves. Wasn't he looking for death? If it wasn't for Dustless, this guy would have been killed already. Now that Wei Court was willing to help Dustless get rid of this burden, he couldn't ask for more. It's the same as Dustless's guess. Murasame Rain took the letter in Itsuka Kotori's hand and looked at it carefully. She frowned and said, "He really used Shido. No wonder he left with Wei Court's people. But didn't Shido think that this must be Wei Court's trap?" "I told you." Dustless was quite calm, as if he already expected this. "Itsuka Shido is too kind. He used the emotional card a little bit, and that guy will definitely be fooled. It's not that Wei Court is too smart, it's just that Itsuka Shido is too naive. Without power, he always wanted to do things beyond his ability. It was only a matter of time before he was unlucky. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates." Chapter 2160. It's too late to say anything now. Don't worry about these useless things. What's important now is how to save my brother and your Irene. Itsuka Kotori looked at Dustless and said seriously. Especially when she mentioned your Irene, she purposely emphasized the word your Irene. Obviously she was reminding Dustless not to get involved. Although Itsuka Kotori wasn't happy with what Dustless said before, she could only grit her teeth and admit it. After all, this was the truth. Itsuka Shido was too childish when it came to relationships. After being tricked and used slightly, even if he knew that it was a trap, he would still persevere and fall into it. The current situation was like that. He clearly knew that Wolcott wasn't a good person, but he still fell into the trap. Where is the place of the transaction? Dustless didn't want to argue with Itsuka Kotori and looked at Rain Murasame. Their company, damn in our company. Murasame Ling Yin's face was ugly. This was like a sheep entering the tiger's den. What if we reject Wei Court's offer? Itsuka Kotori frowned and asked. This. Rain Murasame went silent for a while and read the letter carefully. She shook her head and said, "It's not detailed. He just asked us to take Toka and the others to Diem's company to sell Irene and Shido. We can only follow Wei Court's arrangement for now." After hesitating, Itsuka Kotori nodded. For her, Itsuka Shido's safety was more important than anything else. "I reject." But Dustless looked coldly at Itsuka Kotori and said seriously, "Toka and the others aren't goods. You want to trade them? I reject no one." Hearing this, Itsuka Kotori was enraged. "Are you out of your mind? If you reject, not only will Shido die, even Irene won't be able to escape Wei Court's torture. He hates traitors." Itsuka Kotori took a deep breath and said in a low voice, "I know Wei Scott quite well. That guy is definitely a despicable person. The reason he didn't mention what would happen if they rejected him in the letter is probably to torture them slowly. Is that so? So what?" Dustless took a sip of tea and said coldly, "I've done a lot of bad things in my life, but no matter what, I've always had a clear conscience. I've never regretted my actions. If you want me to trade the 10 incense with someone else, dream on." "You're a blockhead," Itsuka Kotori shouted angrily. She looked at Dustless's expressionless face and felt helpless. She had no choice but to mediate. "I'm only giving them the 10 incense temporarily. Do you think I'm abandoning the elves? Even if you agree, I won't." Itsuka Kotori's job was to protect the elves. How could she hand the elves over to Weiss Court? Absolutely impossible. The reason why he did this was because he wanted to redeem Toka Shido and the others, and then find a way to rescue Toka and the others. "I still refuse." Wuxian shrugged his shoulders. His unyielding attitude made Itsuka Kotori extremely depressed. She roared, "Do you want Irene to be tortured to death? Just watch on helplessly. Was he going to leave her to die? I remember that Irene has already joined you." "I didn't say that I'm going to leave her to die. Don't accuse me." Dustless shook his head mysteriously. His eyes emitted a scarlet murderous aura. He looked at Murasame Rain and asked, "Do you know the location of Diem's company? Diem has a lot of industries and the important companies are hidden in the dark. But in order to facilitate this transaction, Weiss Court told us the location of the meeting. That's enough. I'll do this transaction." Hearing this, Dustless smiled. With the detailed location, why would he worry about not being able to destroy Weiss Court? Dustless didn't like him for a long time. That kid will definitely die, especially since he dared to capture his people. As for Go Shido, Dustless was too lazy to manage him. If possible, he didn't mind finding a suitable opportunity to get rid of Go Shido. This kid was always a burden. If he continued to be with him, maybe he would cause some big problems. "You finally agreed?" Seeing Dustless's confident look, Itsuka Kotori thought that he agreed to hand over Toka and the others temporarily. She immediately took a sip of her coffee and smiled. "I didn't expect that the blockhead would finally be enlightened." "You misunderstood me." Dustless glanced at Itsuka Kotori and said coldly, "I plan to go alone and kill all those people and get Irene. As for handing over Toka, I'll say it again. Dream on. I've said it before, I don't want to live a grand life. I just want to have a clear conscience." Itsuka Kotori's chest rolled and she spat out all the coffee. She looked at Dustless angrily. Why didn't this guy understand what she meant? He was only temporarily handing 10 fragrance and the others over to Wei Scott to stabilize the situation. He would then find an opportunity to snatch them back. However, Dustless was incomparably stubborn at this moment. He was completely one-track minded and did not know how to be flexible. "That little girl trusts me a lot. If I hand her over to Wei Court, how do you expect me to face her in the future?" Dustless asked calmly. Although his tone was light, it was firm. "Not to mention," Dustless sneered and said, "that idiot Westcott actually dares to bargain with me. He doesn't even know what kind of existence his enemy is. Send him to his death. Destroy that bullsh *Tdim company along with him." Dustless's tone was extremely calm. Itsuka Kodari and Murasame Rain looked at each other. Hearing Dustless's words, their scalps went numb. DM Company had thousands of employees. Was this guy going to kill them all? The two girls stared at Dustless. Suddenly they realized that they were wrong. Dustless may seem like a gentle and quiet person, but deep down he was a demon king who killed without batting an eyelid. P.S. 3,000 fresh flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 100 reviews plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2161. Seeing Dustless's insistence, Itsuka Kodari felt helpless. After all, the decision was in Dustless's hands from the very beginning. Toka and the others only listened to Dustless. Even Toka Kurumi, who was always at odds with Dustless, had to follow Dustless's orders. Since you've made up your mind, I won't stop you. Remember to be careful. Itsuka Kodari looked at Dustless seriously and said with a hint of concern in her voice. Don't worry. It's just Wei Coat. I can squash him to death with a single breath. How dare he bargain with me? He must be tired of living. Dustless's body emitted a bone-chilling aura. Those who tried to bargain with him never had a good ending. Hee. If it weren't for your value, I would have killed you traitors long ago. A man's sinister laughter came from a sealed room. This room was very special. The walls were made of special steel. The material was extremely hard and shiny. There were also 3 conspicuous crosses. Irene, Itsuka Shido, and Shina Chongoya were all tied to the crosses. Their expressions were painful. The man with a sinister smile in front of them was the infamous Weiss Court. You despicable bastard. Irene looked at Wei Coat and cursed him for being careless. When Dustless ordered her to kill Wei Coat, Irene hesitated. In fact, she had the absolute advantage and could have killed Wei Coat at any time. However, she didn't kill him in the end. Firstly, she wasn't the merciless type. Secondly, Wei Coat had a hostage. Irene didn't kill him. However, as the saying went, the older the ginger, the spicier it was. Knowing that Irene was moved by compassion, Westcott tried to persuade her with reason and moved her with emotion. Very soon Irene was tricked, and it was too late for regrets. Despicable? Perhaps. Westcott only responded softly. He didn't care whether it was despicable or honorable at all. He smiled and said, however, these are not important to me. As long as I get the elves, I will leave this broken place of Japan. I can give up everything else. The only thing I care about is the elves, including you, Irene. Wei Coat looked deeply at Irene and said, actually, it's right for you to betray me. Because one day in the future when I get the elves, even if you didn't betray me, I will still kill you. Why? Irene's face was ashen. She glared at Wei Coat. This bastard's intention to get rid of her. Do you even need to say it? At this moment, a cold voice suddenly rang out. Everyone was stunned, including Westcott. Who is it? Get out here. Wei Coat looked around and found that there was no one around. He broke out in cold sweat. This room is sealed to defend against sudden attacks. It's made of special steel and the most advanced technology of this era. But this sound, where did it come from? Wei Coat's face was ugly. His eyes widened again. He looked around, but there was still no one. Irene, the reason why he wants to kill you is that if the elves disappear one day in the future, you, the strongest magician and former ally, will become the biggest obstacle. This mysterious figure hit the nail on the head. He also planned to do so. After the elves disappear, Irene would be redundant. It would be best if she died. I see. Hearing this, Irene understood and nodded in agreement. She smiled bitterly and said, that's right. If the elves disappear, my value will be greatly reduced. I will even become a threat. But you are... Irene's mind buzzed. She suddenly felt that this voice was familiar. A young man's figure appeared in her mind. You are Lord Dustless? Dustless. Wei Coat looked as if he had seen a ghost when he heard this. His face drooped and became gloomy. Towards Dustless, Westcott had always harbored reverence in his heart. He wasn't an elf, but he had a strength that was even more terrifying than an elf. Wei Coat had a love-hate relationship with Dustless. He loved Dustless' powerful strength, but he hated Dustless for being too treacherous. With just a few words, he made Ellen betray him. If it wasn't for Wei Coat's intelligence, he might have been killed by Ellen. But there is nothing to worry about. Wei Coat was relieved after thinking about it. He said calmly, This secret room uses the most advanced technology. Even if I set it up as a precaution, the elves will not be able to break in. How can a vulgar person like you understand my master's strength? You are just a frog at the bottom of a well. How laughable. Irene took the opportunity to mock him. Is that so? Then why doesn't he come in? Wei Coat laughed sinisterly. If he can come in, I will stand there and let him kill me. I promise I will not resist. Boom boom boom. However, as soon as he finished speaking, a deafening sound swept across the room. Endless shockwaves spread out. It was so strong that people could not open their eyes. Then a blinding light shone in. I have come in openly. Shouldn't you be standing there to die? The Grim Reaper's voice echoed in Westcott's ears. He ignored the piercing pain in his eyes from the scorching sun and forcefully opened them. A glowing figure stood in front of Westcott, tall and straight like a mountain. Wei Coat, right? Give me your neck. I have not killed anyone for a long time. I have specially come to send you to heaven. P.S. 3,000 fresh flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2162. How is this possible? Who do you think you are to come in so easily? Weiss screamed at the top of his lungs. His old face was stinging. He had just said that he would block Dustless outside and this guy had barged in. Wasn't this a little too fast? How is it not possible? Dustless asked back. What you can't do doesn't mean that others can't do it either. You're so stupid. Do you think that others can only stand behind you and look up to you if you can't do it yourself? Really, you're even more narcissistic than that little brat Coterie. Dustless mocked Wei Scott. At the same time he glanced at Irene. As for Atsuka and his sister, they were in a trance. Their faces were pale and bloodless. Clearly they had been tortured by Wei Scott. What a silly girl. She actually fell into a trap to save Shido. Dustless could only roll his eyes after eavesdropping on their conversation. In fact, he really wanted to kill Shido. It would be best if he died. He was too much of an eyesore. Cut the crap. Where's the elf? You've seen my letter, right? Where's the elf I need? Why did you come alone? Looking into the distance, Wei Scott realized that Dustless was the only one who came. Wei Scott's expression instantly turned black as a black pot. He smiled sinisterly and said, Have you forgotten what I said? Elf. Dustless looked directly at Weiss, completely ignoring his crazy expression. He sneered. You still dare to bargain with me? Kill yourself now and I'll leave your corpse intact. I don't even want to dirty my hands with trash like you. You. Wei Scott was instantly enraged. He looked at Wuxia angrily. Not only did this bastard ignore his agreement, but he even dared to look down on him. How dare he? You forced me to do this. Weiss suddenly strode towards Irene and smiled evilly. Since you didn't bring your elf, I'll kill the hostage. Let's start with Irene. As soon as he finished speaking, he took out a dagger and slowly slid it towards Irene's neck. I didn't even blink. Seeing the approaching dagger, Irene didn't know why, but her mind was incomparably calm. She looked at Wei Scott with disdain. Following you for a few years, I can only say that I was blind to follow a wild dog that eats people without spitting out the bones. After that, Irene closed her eyes and waited for death. You're courting death. Wei Scott was enraged by Irene's words, and the dagger in his hand stabbed towards Irene's forehead. At the same time, a strong gravitational force locked onto Irene, uprooting the cross that bound her. 10,000 mammoth heavenly attraction. Just as the tip of the dagger was about to pierce through Irene, a gravitational force that distorted space and time erupted from Dustless's palm. It locked onto Irene tightly and sucked her body together with the cross. Is this the power to control gravity? Wei Scott's eyes froze as he looked at Dustless in disbelief. Meanwhile, Irene had already landed beside Dustless. Although she's trash, she can tell that I'm controlling gravity. Not bad. Dustless nodded slowly, silently agreeing with Wei Scott's words. I want you even more. Irene escaped. Not only did Wei Scott not realize the danger, but he became even crazier. He realized that compared to Dustless, any elf was weak and couldn't even withstand a single blow. You're courting death. Locking onto the madness and greed in Wei Scott's eyes, Dustless revealed his killing intent. After so many years, there was still someone who dared to look at him with greed. It was probably during the period when Dustless hadn't risen to power yet. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. Without wasting any time, Dustless condensed a dazzling light at the tip of his thumb and aimed it at Wei Scott's head. Don't mess around or we'll fight to the death. As if sensing the aura of death, Wei Scott suddenly shivered. He quickly pointed at Itsuka Shido and threatened, "You saved one but I still have 2 hostages. If you dare to do anything to me, I'll humiliate them both." Wei Scott warned loudly. In fact, he didn't dare to kill Itsuka Shido and Konya Shina at the moment. He was still counting on them to threaten Dustless to live. "Are you sure?" Hearing this, Dustless's lips curled up into an evil smile. He laughed in his heart. "I originally planned to kill you and end it once and for all, but it seems that I can postpone it. I'll purposely provoke you, kid. It'll be best if I can borrow your hand to kill Itsuka Shido. Then it'll have nothing to do with me." Thinking of this, Dustless lowered the light in his hand. "Phew. At least you know what's good for you." Seeing this, Wei Scott heaved a sigh of relief. Having Dustless's bright light aimed at his head, he was really scared. He looks like there's still a chance." Then Wei Scott laughed excitedly. Since Dustless chose to give up on attacking, it meant that he still cared about Itsuka Shido and Konya Shina's lives. Poochie. However, not long after, Wei Scott felt a sharp pain in his right leg. He almost lost his balance and fell to the ground. This. Looking down, Westcott was shocked to discover that there was a hole in his right calf at some point in time. Furthermore, the wound was emitting a smell of smoke. Clearly it was charred. I'll make you pay. Having his calf crippled by Dustless, Wei Scott was instantly enraged. He glared at Dustless. This guy was too strong, so naturally he didn't dare to cause trouble. Therefore, Wei Scott vented all the accumulated anger in his body on Itsuka Shido. Bang bang bang. Slap slap slap. With his right leg crippled, Wei Scott, who was a powder keg, was completely ignited. He punched and kicked Itsuka Shido like a madman, slapping and slapping him like crazy. In less than 10 seconds, Itsuka Shido's body swelled up. There were injuries all over his body. He was beaten up by the angry Wei Scott. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 reviews plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2163. Bang. 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 Wei Scott was like an angry lion. Dustless could not afford to offend him, but that did not mean he could not afford to offend Ito Shido. Wei Scott laughed bitterly and beat him up without hesitation. Poochie. 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 After a few seconds, Ito Shido spat out a few mouthfuls of blood. His face was red and purple and there were fist marks all over his body. He looked extremely miserable. Although Wei Scott did not dare to kill Ito Shido directly, he still inflicted the greatest pain on his body. "You bastard, why did you hit me? The one who punched you in the leg was that guy, right?" Ito Shido was still in a daze, but after Wei Scott's beating, his mind suddenly became very clear. He looked at Wei Scott angrily, and his mind was filled with hundreds of thousands of, "What the F*** CK? What, you don't like it?" Wei Scott sneered and his handsome face was full of arrogance. "I don't like you, okay? Can't I hit you to vent my pain?" He dared to talk back. Pot, pot, pot. At the end of his sentence, Wei Scott gave him a few more slaps. Ito Shido's mouth was crooked and blood mixed with teeth fell out. It was as miserable as it could be. "It hurts." Ito Shido screamed. His face was swollen and bruised and he looked like a pig's head. His eyes were also punched a few times and the fist marks were black like a panda's. "Ito Shido didn't hit you. What's the point of bullying me? If you have the guts, go beat up someone else." Ito Shido shouted angrily. Being beaten up by Wei Scott for no reason, no matter how good his temper was, he was still furious. "Dustless hit you and you hit him if you have the guts. What's the point of bullying me? You still don't like it? Interesting." Wei Scott was shocked, but it only lasted for a moment. He looked at Ito Shido with even more anger and cursed. "That Dustless looked down on me and now you, a piece of trash, dare to look down on me? You deserve a beating." Bang bang bang. Thinking of this, Wei Scott kicked Ito Shido twice more. He was extremely cunning and purposely chose the softest part of his abdomen to attack, causing Ito Shido to grit his teeth in pain. "Why is this brat so tough?" Dustless, who was expressionless on the side, was actually laughing in his heart. At the same time he was secretly speechless. It seems that the protagonists of every world are all thick-skinned and extremely durable. Pooh. In the end, Itsuka Shido spat out a mouthful of blood and fainted. What a pity. He's still breathing. This Westcott has a pig's brain. Can't you just give him a stab? Fight my ass. Dustless cursed inwardly, but on the surface he was filled with righteous indignation. He looked at Westcott furiously and rebuked, "How dare you bully Sherdao like this? I'll make sure you die without a complete corpse." Are you sad? Westcott looked at Dustless with interest. When he saw that Dustless wanted to tear him into pieces, he was elated. He secretly laughed. Although I can't beat you, at least I can make Dustless so angry. Thinking of this, Westcott's big hand grabbed Ito Shido again. Slap, slap, slap. After a few more merciless slaps, Itsuka Shido, who had been knocked unconscious, opened his eyes and mouth again under the stimulation of pain. He glared angrily at Westcott, who was beating him like a madman. Just as he was about to curse, he suddenly felt a sharp pain in his mouth. Westcott became fiercer and fiercer. He knocked out Ito Shido's front teeth and his mouth was full of blood. Sob, sob, sob. Shido, I'm sorry. Seeing Ito Shido's miserable appearance, Dustless actually squeezed out 2 drops of tears and cried in sorrow. The more you cry, the more I'll beat you. I'll make you angry. Westcott thought. Sob, 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 sob. Seeing that Westcott ignored him and continued to beat Ito Shido, Dustless cried even harder. Dustless's cries became louder and louder. Westcott became more excited when he realized that Dustless must be concerned about Ito Shido. Bullying this kid was indirectly hurting Dustless's self-esteem. Westcott became fiercer and fiercer. This guy, she looked at Wuxian carefully and saw his sorrowful appearance. She lowered her head and muttered to herself, this guy can't be doing this on purpose, right? He clearly knows that the more he cries, the more Westcott will beat Itsuka up. Yet he still cries so sadly. In fact, if one looked carefully, one would discover that Wu Chen's shoulders were twitching and the corners of his mouth were twitching non-stop. How was he crying? He was obviously laughing non-stop. He was just forcefully squeezing out tears to cover it up. It's on purpose. Must be on purpose. It's definitely on purpose. Ito Shido glared at Dustless. His eyes were bleeding and so were his ears and nose. After being beaten up by Westcott, he was severely injured. Even his abdomen had caved in. Huh. Dustless's crying stopped instantly. He suddenly felt a cold gaze. He subconsciously looked up and realized that Ito Shido was staring at him. Have I been discovered? Dustless didn't hide it after being discovered by Ito Shido. The corner of his mouth curled into a bloodthirsty smile. In that case, you can be on your way. Don't worry, kid. I'll take care of your sister for you. Or, as if reading Dustless's mind, Ito Shido roared. However, he was already crippled. His throat was no longer normal and he could only roar like a wild beast. Go to hell, Tsukuyami. With a roll of his eyes, boundless mental strength invaded Ito Shido's mind. Dustless gave Ito Shido a pretty good death. At the very least, he enjoyed 24 hours in Tsukuyami's world, enjoying the treatment of an emperor in the world. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2164. Kid, don't play dead. Get up, you're my trump card. If you die, I'll be surrounded by these people, Westcott roared. Seeing Ito Shido's eyes were closed and he wasn't even breathing, Westcott slapped him a few more times. He instinctively felt that Ito Shido was faking it. After all, even though he had abused Ito Shido, it was only physical abuse. He didn't attack any of his vital organs. Westcott knew that Ito Shido was his life, so he couldn't kill him. He didn't have the guts either. Without a hostage, he would be eaten alive. Slap, slap, slap. Seeing that Itsuka Shido didn't move at all after the slap, Westcott was furious. He cursed in his heart. This brat is really good at acting. It's like it's real. So he slapped him a few more times. Brother. However, Itsuka Kotori, who had just arrived, happened to see this scene. Seeing Itsuka Shido's pitiful state, her eyes turned red. Shido, wake up. I know you're just too tired and fell asleep. Don't play dead. After a while, Ito Kotori called Ito Shido's name with a trembling voice. Her voice was so sad that anyone who heard it would cry. However, Ito Shido ignored her. His eyes were still closed and he looked dead. Ito Kodori was speechless. It was as if she had been abandoned by the world. He was petrified. No need to scream. No one will listen to you even if you scream yourself hoarse. Ito Shido is dead. Dustless said with a heavy expression. There was a hint of sadness in his voice. This guy is a movie king. Irene was speechless. Her eyes were twitching. She was sure that Dustless had deliberately killed Ishido. However, as Dustless's little brother, Irene chose to remain silent. She pointed at Westcott and angrily rebuked. It's all because of this bastard that Ishido died. I'm going to cut you into pieces. Itsuka Kodori looked at Wei Scott coldly. Her eyes were like a venomous snake that had been hungry for a long time. Her eyes were filled with venom, making Wei Scott's heart tremble. Kodori had also witnessed the scene of Wei Scott beating up Shido. Oh no, this is bad. Wei Scott felt a chill run down his spine. Naturally, he also sensed the danger. He instinctively took a few steps back and hid behind Chong Gongzana's body. He threatened loudly, "You'd better know your place. Be careful or I'll kill this little girl." With the dagger pointed at Shonya Shina, Westcott warned, "This guy is Itsuka Shido's only sister. He wouldn't want his own sister to die, would he?" It had to be said that Wei Scott was quite smart. He knew how to make use of the human form. After hearing this, Itsuka Kodori's body stiffened. She was hesitant. There's a chance. Fortunately, I'm smart. I didn't see the value of these trash. Seeing Itsuka Kodori's hesitation, Wei Scott let out a sigh of relief. The reason why Itsuka Kodori stopped was because she didn't want Shido's only sister to die. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. At the same time, a large number of light beams came from afar. Countless women wearing display devices descended from the sky and quickly arrived at Wei Scott's location. He's trash. What a waste of time. They've been waiting for me for so long. Are they finally here? Wei Scott's heart was relieved. He finally felt that there was hope for him to live. Tokichi Origami and Hikari Fujiko? Dustless looked up and suddenly saw two familiar faces. To save a scumbag like you, AST mobilized so many people. They really care about you. Itsuka Kodori suppressed her anger and gritted her teeth. Of course. After all, we have a symbiotic relationship. If I'm dead, who can provide AST with the display device they want? Wei Scott chuckled and said with a tone as if everything was under his control. My death won't benefit AST. It's expected that they would lower their heads and help me. Not to mention, they were just using each other. Wei Scott's death wouldn't benefit AST either. AST's mission is to capture the elves. The elves are all in Dustless's hands. Since they appeared here, capturing the elves is also one of their missions. Oh right, there's something else I forgot to tell you. Wei Scott's face was gloomy. His hoarse voice was filled with pride. I forgot to tell you. When I first started, I knew that you wouldn't hand over the elves. So I made 2 preparations. Now that AST is back, it means that the mission I gave them was completed perfectly. 2 preparations? What do you mean? Itsuka Kodori was embarrassed. Even though she wanted to cut Wei Scott into pieces, she had to hold it in. I ordered AST to attack your house. Looking at Itsuka Kodori, Westcott laughed coldly and said, the elves' powers have been sealed. Capturing them will be a piece of cake for us. Now that AST is here, it can only mean one thing. The mission was completed perfectly. How is it? Now the tables have turned, right? It seems that I'm the final victor. Wei Scott looked at the silent Dustless with disdain. He purposely laughed loudly as if he was afraid that Dustless would not hear him. You sly bastard. It's a perfect match for Dim to have a scum like you, Itsuka Kodori said angrily. Thank you for the compliment. Wei Scott calmly accepted Itsuka Kodori's compliment, but his eyes were fixed on Dustless. He wanted to capture a trace of sadness, but Dustless was like a calm sea, not showing any sadness from beginning to end. His expression was as calm as usual. Wei Scott could even feel the mockery and contempt in Dustless's eyes, as if he was watching a clown's performance. Wei Scott suddenly felt a sense of apprehension and hesitation as if a disaster was about to befall him. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 reviews plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2165. After hearing such a perfect plan from me, this guy should be disappointed. Wilcote scrutinized Dustless, trying to find a flaw on his face. However, he was destined to be disappointed. All along, Dustless's expression didn't change. He was like a piece of lifeless ice, silent and uncommunicative. It was as if everything had nothing to do with him. You're the one who should be disappointed, idiot. Of all the people you actually chose AST to work for you, are you retarded? After a moment of silence, Dustless's face showed a mocking expression. Good boy, I've already captured the elves and you still dare to talk to me like this? Aren't you afraid that I'll kill all of them? Wilcote threatened loudly, his words were filled with madness, and it seemed like he was really going to kill him. Do you see that? Pointing at the AST members flying over from afar, Wilcote laughed. Each of them has elves in their hands. What are you going to use to fight me? You don't know what's good for you. Looking closely, he saw the AST members flying over, each of them carrying elves. Something doesn't seem right. Wilcote suddenly realized something and muttered to himself, puzzled. If the elves were tied up in chains, it would be understandable, but the strange thing was that the little hands of Yamazaki Toka and the others took the initiative to hold on to the AST members. Especially when the elves were talking and laughing with the AST members, it was simply blinding to Wilcote's dog eyes. Strange, when did the elves start to be so obedient? Wilcote asked with a frown. His eyes flickered and immediately guessed. Could it be that Tokiichi Origami and the others used some trick to deceive the elves? Is that why they are so peaceful and friendly? All along, the elves had been synonymous with cruelty, extremely unfriendly to humans and even more so to AST who wanted to kill them. Now they were so harmonious, Wilcote found it unbelievable. Anyway, no matter what AST brought the elves over, this means that victory is in my hands. Soon, the doubts in Wilcote's heart disappeared and he looked coldly at Dustless and sneered, "Why aren't you screaming now? Come and kill me. If you dare to touch me, I'll kill one of the elves. Since there are so many of them, one more won't matter." You despicable trash. Irene and Itsuka Kotori glared at Wei Scott furiously. Their eyes were burning with fire as if they wanted to burn Wei Scott alive. This guy was too cunning. He wasn't strong, but he was good at scheming. I want to ask, is this your trump card? Dustless completely ignored Westcott's mockery and asked calmly, I'll give you one last chance. Show me your other trump card. If your trump card is just to threaten me with the 10 incense sticks, Westcott, right? You'll die a horrible death. Moreover, your so-called trump card is actually a lousy one. You're just asking for humiliation. Then I'll have to disappoint you. This is my trump card. Westcott snorted valiantly and arrogantly, showing off his arrogance as he said, Do it if you have the guts. I can guarantee that I'll kill an elf for every step you take. Ha, you still want to fight me? Ha. His unbridled laughter filled the air and Irene and Itsuka Kotori's eyes almost popped out of their sockets. Either one of them could easily kill Westcott, but the lives of the elves were still in Westcott's hands, so they didn't dare to say anything. Master. At the same time, the members of AST landed on the ground, and each of them had an elf in their hands and they looked very respectful. Very good, ha. Westcott laughed wildly again and looked down at Dustless with a crazed look and said arrogantly, Kneel now or I'll kill these elves. It doesn't matter if one of them dies. You be *starred. Itsuka Kotori and Irene's faces turned green. They didn't expect Westcott to be so despicable, using the lives of the elves to force Dustless to kneel. This man was not bad-looking, but his actions were too disgusting. Kneel and beg me. Westcott screamed madly in his mind. He was going to pay back the humiliation he received from Dustless. Hearing this, Dustless looked at Wei Scott with pity. After looking at him for a while, he asked speechlessly, Are you a pig? Or are you retarded? You're asking for it. Westcott's face twisted and he looked at the elves in Tokichi Origami's hands and ordered coldly, Tokichi Origami, kill her now. After saying that, Westcott looked at Dustless arrogantly, sincerely hoping that this guy would kneel down and beg for mercy. However, Dustless only kept silent, and even closed his eyes as if he had nothing to do with it. Bastard, are your ears plugged? Kill her. Westcott was furious. Dustless ignoring him was bad enough, but what angered him the most was that Tokichi Origami was also standing still, as if she didn't hear the order just now. Now kill the brat in your hands. Westcott roared again, his voice sounding like an enraged lion. However, what made Westcott vomit blood was that Tokichi Origami didn't even look at him. Rebel, are you all rebelling? How dare you ignore my order? Do you believe that I'll make you pack up and get lost? A mere Essie dares to challenge me, you're courting death. Westcott roared like an erupting volcano, his tone filled with endless anger. However, Tokichi Origami and the others still didn't move, treating Westcott's words like air. They didn't even look at Westcott and only stared at one person with respectful eyes. Dustless. Westcott, haven't you figured it out? You've been wrong about one thing from the beginning. Dustless suddenly opened his eyes and looked at the twisted middle-aged man with pity. The lord they called before was me. P.S. 3,000 fresh flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2166. Call you Lord? Bullshit. Without even thinking about it, Court immediately denied it. Dustless sneered. Do you think I'm an idiot? This group of people is AST, the most hostile existence to elves, even more so than me. How could they be with you? AST was a special organization established to annihilate elves. They would try their best to destroy any elves they encounter. Dustless was a group of people who protected elves. How could they recognize Dustless as their boss? This joke was not funny at all. You don't believe me? Hearing that, Dustless looked at Court with a mocking expression. He then looked at Yuichi Origami and the others and said lazily, Who are you calling Lord? Some idiot's head is stuffed with donkey hair. His head can't hear clearly. Let him hear it clearly. You're going too far. Hearing that, Court was furious. This bastard as a powerhouse did not have the bearing of a powerhouse at all. He mocked him the moment he opened his mouth. He was too willful. I advise you to be sensible. Court was too lazy to argue. He only looked at Yuichi Origami and the others with an unfriendly gaze. His eyes were flickering with a cold light, obviously warning them. However, Yuichi Origami and the others did not even look at Court. They treated this guy as a clown and directly ignored him. Lord Dustless. Under Court's incredulous gaze, Yuichi Origami and the others kneeled on one knee and looked at Dustless with a respectful expression. How is this possible? Why is AST in the organization that protects elves together? Have you all betrayed us? Court roared furiously. Looking at Yuichi Origami and the others kneeling on the ground, his eyeballs almost popped out. First Irene betrayed him. Now AST, who he trusted, also betrayed him. Court even wanted to die. His face was green with anger. How could he endure this? He was being played around by Dustless like an idiot. This guy. Itsuka Kodori and Irene looked at each other and they could see the shock in each other's eyes. Dustless was able to subdue AST without them noticing. This was a method that sent chills down their spines. After all, AST was extremely hostile towards elves. Rise all of you. Looking at the girls kneeling on one knee, Dustless revealed a gentle smile. Why did he conquer this group of arrogant girls? In fact, it was very simple. There was only one word: strength. No matter which world one was in, having the supreme power to crush a world would give one a great right to speak, and one could walk unscrupulously. Yuichi Origami was subdued by Dustless's strength and resurrected her parents. Therefore this cold and arrogant girl submitted to him. She lowered her arrogant head and obediently followed Dustless's orders. Therefore Dustless finally convinced the entire AST through Yuichi Origami. In the past, AST had a great battle with Dustless because of the Night Sword God Toka. The result was very miserable and they were crushed. From that moment on, this group of girls feared Dustless. Now it was natural for them to side with Dustless. Motherf *cur, you bunch of ingrates, trash. After being stunned for a while, Court cursed loudly. He was so angry that his eyes were seeing stars. His angry roar echoed in the sky and lingered in the air. I was the one who provided you with your ambition. Now you betrayed me. You bunch of trash. Aren't you afraid of suffering? Court was like a gambler who had lost a lot, cursing desperately. Humph, Court, you hypocritical wolf, this isn't over. However, at this time the controlled Chong Gong Zena looked coldly at Court and said coldly, Shido has told me that you guys conducted secret experiments on my body. I only have 10 years left at most. You knew. Hearing this, Court's expression changed drastically. Chong Gong Zena's piercing cold gaze made his heart tremble. he said in a trembling voice. You knew. There's no such thing as an airtight wall in this world. You think you can deceive everyone? Can you not be so ridiculous? Dustless looked at Wilcourt with pity. He couldn't be bothered to argue with this homeless dog. Coterie, I'll leave him to you. No matter what, he must die in the end. I'll definitely let him die, but not now. Coterie nodded. She then looked at Shido, who was beaten to death by Wilcourt, and said in a low voice, killing him directly is too easy for this guy. I'll repay you for everything you did to Shido. In your dreams. Without a second thought, Westcott turned around and ran for his life. What a joke, he had just beaten Shido to death. What if he was tortured by Coterie at Suka? He can still run so fast with a crippled leg? In the face of death, a person's potential is indeed stimulated. Dustless had just crippled one of Wilcourt's legs, but this guy was running for his life like a tiger, as if nothing had happened to him. Then I'll have to cripple your other leg. Dustless's eyes were cold. He suddenly raised his right hand and activated the glint fruit ability. A dazzling light gathered in front of his hand and aimed at the limping Wilcourt. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. With a light flick of his finger, the dazzling light shot out in a straight line like a rocket. Poochie. Weiscourt's other leg was instantly pierced through, leaving behind a bloody hole. It was too horrible to look at. Moreover, due to the incomparably blazing speed of light, the bloody hole was instantly charred. Plop. Westcott was heavily injured and fell to the ground in a sorry state. He looked at Coterie, who was slowly walking over with a face full of fear. He had just beaten Shido to death, and this brother complex definitely wouldn't let him go. A pitiful person must have something to hate. Dustless was expressionless. He shook his head at the regretful Wilcourt. If he had known this would happen, he wouldn't have done it in the first place. He still had to pay back the debt he owed. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 300 rewards plus updates, 1,000 reviews plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2167. Everything came to an end with AST's surrender and Wilcourt's defeat. Dustless knew that his journey in this world had come to an end. Although they did not see Wilcourt's body, since this guy killed Itsuka Shido and tortured him to death, he must have a miserable ending if he was handed over to Itsuka Coterie. After all, Itsuka Coterie was a brother complex. Just as Dustless was planning when to leave, an unexpected person suddenly visited him, Meijio the Temptress. Miss Meijio the Temptress, just tell me what you want. In Itsuka Coterie's house, Dustless changed his usual teasing and poured a cup of hot tea for Meijio the Temptress. Of course, this was just for show. He knew that Meijio the Temptress hated men. Even talking to Dustless would be an insult, let alone drinking his tea. Dustless also knew that Meijio the Temptress was not a bad person. She was just an innocent little girl. It could only be said that the trauma she suffered in the past had left a shadow in her heart. However, the scene that happened next was truly beyond Dustless's expectations. Gulp gulp. Meijio the Temptress drank the tea Dustless served without saying a word. She poured herself another cup of hot tea and drank it very quickly. It seemed that she was very thirsty. Miss Meijio the Temptress, you didn't come to me to drink tea, did you? Wuxian asked strangely. In fact, he was going to leave soon. If he could resolve the grievances, he would resolve them. He didn't expect to lure Xiao Meijio to leave this world with him. After all, he had cheated her before. Now Wuxian felt embarrassed when he thought about it. Are you leaving? Meijio the Temptress suddenly looked at Dustless nervously and asked very seriously, where are you going? Is it far? Hearing this, Dustless was silent for a moment. In the end, he looked at Temptress Meijio like an idiot. His speechless gaze was clearly asking Temptress Meijio, does this have anything to do with you? However, out of politeness, Dustless still said seriously, of course it's very far, but how did you know? I should have only told Zhou Xian and the others about this. Of course it was Toby Origami and Toby Xiang who told me. Temptress Meijio said without hesitation, they are my very good friends. Origami Kite. Dustless frowned deeply. Only then did he remember that Night Beauty Jio was a Yuri lover, and in the original work she was very interested in origami. None of your business. Suddenly thinking that Xiao Meijio might want to steal the girls, Dustless's attitude changed drastically. He snorted and said, I have nothing to say about this. Don't meddle in other people's business. You bastard. Temptress Meijio's mouth twitched. She secretly cursed dustless bastard. Was she so annoying? Please pay attention to your attitude a little bit. Humph. Wuxian just snorted coldly with an unapproachable expression. He said coldly, I can tell you very responsibly that they are all mine. Since you dare to steal my girls, you are really overestimating yourself. If not for the fact that I know you don't hate me, I would have slapped you to death. Also, I am going to a very far place and I will not come back with them for the rest of my life. This is our farewell. You bastard, you have no right to decide other people's future. Hearing this, Temptress Meijio suddenly became angry. She liked Yuichi Origami and the others very much, and so did the other elves. It was just because Dustless, this third wheel, was here that everything became so disharmonious. Whether I have the right to decide or not is not up to you. You have no right to talk nonsense. Besides, have you forgotten who you are? Hurry up and call me master. Dustless said disapprovingly. Itsuka Kotori and the others wanted to leave with him. How could Temptress Meijio stop them? Don't push it. Temptress Meijio's face was red and she was extremely miserable. Every time she communicated with Dustless, she would be angered by him. Besides, even if I don't have the right to decide, do you have the right to? Dustless retorted. After a moment of silence, Temptress Meijio's expression changed. Finally, she gritted her teeth and asked, Where are you going? I want to go too. No matter where it is, I will go. Faster, thief. Hearing this, Dustless could not help but curse. He was speechless and looked at Temptress Meijio as if he had seen a ghost. He could not help but ask himself, is Temptress Meijio crazy? She is crazy to be a lesbian. Is she not afraid that I will do something inappropriate to her? Dustless was in a dilemma. As the saying goes, a woman will dress up for her lover and die for her lover. Now Temptress Meijio chose to dance with the wolf in order to be a lesbian. She was willing to be in the same boat with the person she hated the most. Dustless was really impressed, but he did not know whether to laugh or cry. Even so, Dustless was quite happy for Night Blade God 10 Fragrance and the others. All along, no matter what, seducing Night Meijio was sincere to them. Just this point alone was enough. Do you agree or not? Temptress Meijio looked at Dustless nervously. Her eyes were shining and her pitiful eyes circled around Dustless. Even her eyes were wet, and her appearance of being on the verge of tears was really pitiful. It was as if she was threatening Dustless that she would cry as long as he rejected her. This girl seems to be serious. It doesn't look like she is pretending. Dustless frowned. He could see the true meaning of Temptress Meijio's eyes. He could not help but curse. The world has really changed. What are you muttering about? Seeing Dustless's face twitching wildly, Temptress Meijio saw it clearly. She thought that Dustless refused. Finally, she made up her mind and did something that Dustless did not expect. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 evaluation votes plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates.